everybody, it's Katie back with another episode of my vlog, and today I'm standing a little further away from the camera than I normally do because I want to answer a viewer question. Someone DM'd me and asked the question, how many projects do you have going at any one given time? And I thought this was a great question because the short answer is a lot. And the long answer is talking a little bit about my process and how I approach multi-project workflow, and maybe a little bit of show and tell in terms of what I currently have as a work in progress. So I like to work on lots of projects simultaneously. I am not the type of person who can just start one project and follow it all the way through to completion before starting another project. And part of the reason for that is I have so many different things I'm interested in and things I'm interested in working on or trying out, different ideas I want to get into, stuff like that. But part of it is just because the nature of my life as a busy mom, business owner, stroke dementia caregiver, and artist means that I don't have a lot of just unbroken, dedicated time to spend in the studio on any one given project. And so because my time is kind of fragmented, I've developed over the years this way of working where I basically have tons of projects going at any one given time. And then depending on what type of time I find myself with when I get some free time, if it's a little tiny chunk of time, I might want to approach one project. If it's a bigger chunk of time, I would want to approach a totally different project. You know, some days I wake up and I really feel like sewing, and so that's what I want to work on. Other days I really want to work on knitting, or I really want to work on drawing, or I really want to work on photography or something else. And so having tons of projects going at once allows me to kind of, depending on what my mood is or what the time I find myself with is, I can just jump right in and pick up on a project where I left it off. Now, this does mean there's lots and lots of half done, or not even half, partially done projects spread around the studio at any one given point. And I can put them all away, but then it makes it hard to find things. So the other thing I like to do is hang things up on the walls and surround myself with the projects I'm currently working on so that even if I'm not currently working on them, I'm seeing them. Every time I walk into the room, I see them. I go, oh yeah, it triggers me to have a different idea about maybe a different approach or how I want to do things, or just makes me feel guilty about having so many projects open at once. But I've really developed I'd say over the last 10 years generally, but really over the last 3 or 4 years, this pretty, I don't want to say it's an efficient working style because art is not about efficiency, but for me, there is an element of efficiency in that I can shift back and forth between the projects pretty seamlessly, and I don't experience a lot of downtime where I'm just sitting around going, oh God, what am I going to work on now? I'm also the type of person who, if I do have that feeling of, oh, I'm just not feeling inspired, I don't know what to work on, I can kickstart my creative engine by just working on anything. So doing work gets me more ideas, more inspiration, more excited about doing more work. So it's an awesome way for me to get unstuck if I find myself creatively stuck. But then the flip side of that is I'm constantly having new ideas that I'm excited about. And that makes me want to put aside the projects that I'm in the middle of to start on new ones. So I can get into some trouble with this. And Sean kind of hilariously, many years ago, I went to start on a new custom vest project, like one of these guys here. And he was like, how many vests do you have that you're working on right now? And I said, I don't know. And he goes, go count them. And I went and counted, and it was like, there was like 8 or 9 or something. And he was like, okay, 10's the limit. You can't have more than 10 going at once. And I was like, okay, you know, that's fair. I can't work on more than 10 at once. So at first it was kind of like 10 open projects at a time. Over time, it's become more like 10 projects in any one given medium over time. So it's like 10 vests are allowed, but quilts are not vests. So I can have tons of quilts going at the same time. But again, it allows me to approach, there's all these different stages to a given project. And, maybe I don't feel like piecing together the squares for a quilt today. That's the next step that I have to do on this project. I've made all of these little square units out of the 2 triangles, and I don't know if you can see, but they're all separately pinned up to the wall here. And so the next step for this quilt, quilt, is I have to now start piecing these all together. It took me quite a while to make them. And then if you've been following my social media, you know that I actually finished them a while ago, and I've actually been just playing around with different arrangements for the last several months. And I lay them out, take a picture, rearrange them, take another picture, rearrange them, take another picture. And in the end, after trying out lots and lots of different designs, this is the one that really spoke the most to me. So this is the one I'm going to go with. After I decided on the big square bullseye, I then had to decide which pieces went where. And so that took a while and, you know, a bunch of rearranging and whatnot. And so now finally ready to start sewing the things together. So this will be here today. This is my studio wall. I use it as the backdrop for my vlog, but it is the wall for works in progress. So I'm going to start sewing those together pretty soon. Probably the very next vlog you guys see, this backdrop will look totally different because I will have started putting those together. So, but you know, maybe I don't feel like piecing today and I want to do something different. Maybe I feel like quilting today, which is a totally different stage of the process. Well, good news, I have a quilt that is partially quilted, but not done yet. And so if I feel like quilting today, I could put this one in the machine and finish up the quilting. I'll turn it around so you guys can see the quilting. The whole outline section has been done. But the center of the moth still needs a bunch of work. And if you've been following my vlog from the beginning, you will recognize this piece as something that I was working on a lot at the beginning of this year. Back in January, February, it was up on the wall behind me a whole bunch. But then I just hit a block with it, I guess when COVID hit, and everything kind of went tits up, and I just pretty much stopped working on this one. But it's just sitting in the other room waiting for me to feel inspired and get back to it, or have that chunk of time, you know? In addition, I have this one over here that I've been talking about. This is made out of all the scraps of the various masks that I made over the summer. That also got in the way of a lot of my other sewing projects, but it was a very lucrative sewing project, so I'm not complaining. So this is the thing that I'm making out of all the scraps from those masks that I made. And I think I've showed you guys before, I start with much smaller pieces of fabric and I join them together until I get a little chunk like that big, and then I join those together until I get a little chunk about this big, and then I keep joining things together, and that's the biggest piece of it that I have so far. So that's another type of working. It's piecing, but it's very different. This is very regimented and planned out, and this is very improvisational. So again, depending on how I'm feeling on a given day, do I want to do improv work? Do I not really feel like that creative about doing improv? Well, I'll just piece the things together that I already know what order they go in, right? With the vests, it's kind of the same thing. I'll get an idea for a vest and I'll get started on it, and then I might get stuck. So for instance, these two here, I've got the backs are like looking way good, but then there's nothing on the front. So it's just been hanging up, kind of waiting for me to feel a little bit more inspired or feel like I have a little bit more time. There's never more time, but the question is whether I make the more time, right? And there's other vests too. I told you guys I have a limit of 10. So I've got this one, which has this glow-in-the-dark UFOs are real on the back. And then on the front, I actually took glow-in-the-dark paint, and that is a map of the night sky on the night I was born, actually, for full nerd effect. But I haven't quite figured out what the rest of this vest is, so I just put it aside, but again, in a place where I can see it so that it continues to kind of fire up the creative part of my brain and make me go, oh yeah, gotta get back to that UFOs are real vest. What am I gonna do with that one? So a couple more kind of in the same vein. I started this Halloween vest many years ago, and I just haven't quite finished it, but one of these days, I'm gonna put it together and get those last few elements on there, and then that one will be done. There's no deadline for these, so there's no rush. It's not like I'm having a show or anything. I did this one, again, several years ago. It's a thread spider web. It's all stitched on there. I still need to make the spider. I haven't done it for whatever reason. So But again, I hang these up all around. I can see them. I can get fired up about them. They're obviously not inspiring me to finish them, but they do inspire me about other projects. So that's pretty cool. And then there's another one. I actually just recently took it apart to reuse the pieces on this jacket down here. I think I showed you guys this. I liberated this applique that I made for an older vest that kind of just wasn't going anywhere. Again, it's been sitting around the studio. I've been going, man, I need to finish that thing. And it turned out the answer for that vest wasn't to finish that vest. It was actually to remove the appliques and put them onto a whole different jacket, which is that one down there that I'm working on. So that's pretty cool. That, you know, some things get finished eventually. Some things get recycled, reused, whatever, reimagined into whole different projects. So that's cool. I have a couple other things here I just wanted to show you guys. 2 years ago, 2018, my husband had a stroke. There's a whole bunch of projects that I started in early 2018, which I really kind of cranked along on and got a bunch of stuff done on. And then Sean had a stroke and my creativity just went in the toilet as soon as he had the stroke. I couldn't really do anything creative for probably 6 months. While I was just kind of, wallowing around in this traumatic space and trying to figure out what I was going to do and just trying to survive day to day. And so all those projects went on the back burner, but now I'm, I've emerged from this sort of horrible dark place, and I'm now in this spot where I have more time and energy and I feel more creative. And so I go, hey, what's in the work in progress bin from 2.5 years ago that I haven't completed? So I have a bunch of traditional log cabin quilt blocks that I made using my shibori indigo dyed fabric on the one side, and then the other side is just plain white fabric, and the gold accent fabric is actually a shower curtain that I found at Target. So I made 16 of these blocks, and kind of similar to this, I got stuck on the part where I had to figure out how I want to arrange them in the final quilt. So I've arranged and rearranged these guys a bunch of times and haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm not in a rush about that. I don't feel any pressure. And I know that eventually I'll come back to the project. I'll have a fresh idea. It'll be the right time and I'll be able to finish it. So I don't have any problem with how long it takes me to do this stuff. Again, there's no deadline for that project. There's no show, there's no customer who's waiting for it. So I can just take my time, which is what I like to do with these projects. I have another one here, pretty big one actually. This is supposed to be a quilt for my bed. And I don't know if you guys remember the really, really big backdrop I used to have back here that looked kind of like one big spider web or almost like going into a cosmic tunnel. I dyed that piece of fabric to be the back of this quilt. And then after I dyed it, I was like, oh my God, that can't be the back of a quilt. It's got to be the front of its own quilt. So then I took that apart, but I still have this one, which is a kind of nested crosses design. Whoa, don't know if you can see that whole thing. You sure can't because it's almost a queen size quilt, but wow. And now there's a lot of lint flying around in the air. So this is another one that's just been kind of sitting around back burnered for, 2.5 years, but I will eventually get back to this one. I know I will. And it works the same with me for knitting also. God, there's so much lint in the air now. It's all gonna land on me. I started this knitting project here, again, 2018. I was working on it. We did a couple road trips that year, and this was my car knitting while Sean would drive. And it's almost done, but then Sean had a stroke and now I'm the driver and there's also nowhere to go. So there's no car trips to knit on. And I just kind of shelved this thing and I said, you know what? I'm going to get back to it when I get back to it. I have other projects that I want to work on in the meantime. I'm not feeling fired up about that one. So that's not what I'm going to work on right now. I don't like it when art feels like a chore. I don't like it when my creativity is being used in the service of something that I don't feel like working on. And we all, as artists, have those moments where we kind of question ourselves and go, oh, do I even want to be doing this project anymore? And, I figured out it, like, either just stop completely and take it apart, get rid of it, or just put it aside, let it sit, let it just kind of be background noise, a background thing, in my vision while I'm moving through the studio in a given day. And I will most likely eventually come back to it. Who knows? I mean, maybe I wind up making it all the way into old age and dying with this huge pile of unfinished projects. But I feel like I'm coming back to them, and I do circle back and make progress on them eventually. Sometimes it takes longer than other times. It really just depends on how I'm feeling, what the world is like, what my responsibilities are like, how much free time I have, all of that stuff. But so that's how many projects I have going at once. Now that's just my art projects. There's also, of course, work projects and projects with the kids and projects with Sean and whatnot. And those also take up, I was gonna say some of my time, but that stuff takes up more of my time even than art does. But I prioritize art making because I love doing it. And so I want to be able to do it as much as possible. So again, I like having tons of projects just in the mix so that I can work on anything I want at any given time, because they're all in various stages of completion. And the next step for each project is totally different from the next step on a different project, right? Hope that makes sense. I also did want to say, I think I've mentioned this before on the vlog, that in terms of Goblin Co projects and some of the more conceptual stuff that I work on with Sean, we do seed future projects in current projects, if that makes sense. We've done a lot of talking about things that don't exist yet inside of Pork Magazine or inside of the various zines that we've done. And then at the time that we do it, we think of the thing that we're seeding as kind of a fake project. But in the end, a lot of the fake projects wind up getting made. And so it turns out that they're not fake projects at all. They're future projects, right? So that's another fun way to think about art projects and think about how we interact with our own creative output, if you will. So that's my spiel about how many projects I have going at once. Again, it's a lot, but I keep them all kind of moving forwards, and nothing has languished for so long that it has actually become a dead project at this point. So I'm pretty confident in my ability to just keep on keeping on in this way that I've developed. So let me know if you guys have any more questions. I love getting these prompts. Sometimes I'm just like, what am I going to talk about on my vlog this week? And then somebody asks a great question, which really excites me to answer. So I hope you've enjoyed this peek into my process and my pile of works in progress. Let me know if you have any more questions. Let me know what your creative process is like, or if you do the same thing I do of having tons of little projects going at once that you can pick and choose from, just depending on what your mood is. All right, I'm going to be back in a few more days with the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and everybody, take care and stay safe out there.